Okay. Oops. Yeah. I'm using, which mic am I? I'm 3. And Red Moshe is 2.
And I'm 2.
Oh, people are here. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, those who are here and those who are on the screen. It's nice to have all of you here, and I'm sure we'll be able to communicate one way or the other through the screen or in person. So my Kabbalat, my opening just for this evening is that we're in an interesting part of our Torah reading, this part of our cycle of Torah reading. And this is the Parshat that's called Tisa. And it has to do with with 2 important themes, and we'll talk maybe a little bit about it in a while. One is the idea of the Israelites who had come out of Egypt, who had stood at Sinai, and are still standing at Sinai, as a matter of fact. We had a bit of an interruption of 2 parshiot. And Moses fails to come down on what they had counted as the 40th day. He had said he'll be down in 40 days, receiving the Luchot HaBrit, the tablets of testimony. And he doesn't show up on that 40th day. People think he has disappeared, gone up into the cloud. Today that means something else, going up into the cloud. I don't think it meant the same thing then. And basically, he's not there. So what to do? So they panic, and they ask Aaron to build for them a god. And it's called the golden calf or the molten calf. And that's one important part of this week's Parsha. And it's seen as a really a bad move on their part. And I'll explain that a little later on in this service. And then the second thing was that Moses tries to defend these people, as he often does. He's considered to be the Ro'eh Ne'eman, the faithful shepherd. And indeed, what prepared him to be the leader of the people was that he had been a shepherd for 40 years after he had fled from Egypt, where he was being chased out. So this idea that Moshe wants to defend the people of Israel, and he goes up and tries to develop a contact with God, and he tries to have to look at God's face, and God says, no one sees my face and lives. But what happens up there is that he cajoles God, and we'll talk a little bit about Moshe in a little while. He cajoles God into giving him a key to tshuva, to repentance. And we use that key all through our liturgy around Yom Kippur. It's Slichot, is the 13 attributes. And we'll give of that as well. So it's a very jam-packed Parsha with a lot of stuff going on in it. So my kavanah is that basically what we learn from this episode is that people are impatient. That's one thing, which is not at all strange to us. And the second thing is that people have the capacity of a second chance. And that's a very important principle for us in our tradition. Nobody gets canceled. Nobody gets canceled. Everybody gets a chance to come back and to if you will, calibrate and reorient themselves. And that is the reason we have Yom Kippur every year, because every year you're born anew. You are resurrected at the end of Yom Kippur, and your life begins anew. So that's a wonderful kavanah of the fact that we always have that capacity of returning, recalibrating ourselves. And that doesn't have to happen only on Yom Kippur. It happens every day. When we awaken, we now have the capacity to be truly alive. So if you're able to set up your candles now, we'll be blessing the candles. And those of you who are here, if you wouldn't mind rising, and you can find the blessing for the candles if you need that to read the blessing. It's found on page 1 in your Cedar.
And for those in person, if you want to join us on the bima as we light candles, we'd be delighted to have you.
Holy One of blessing, your presence fills creation. Your presence fills creation. Your presence fills creation. Baruch atah Eloheinu melech haolam. Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher kiddush al mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Shabbat shalom, good Shabbos. Shabbat shalom, good Shabbos. Good to see you in person, not on the screen. you're
Julia,
talk
Shabbat
on
shalom.
the screen.
Everybody on Zoom, Shabbat shalom. Lev.
I hope so.
We'll continue.
Page 2, we do
Perfect.
Yedid Nefesh. Yedid Nefesh is based on the four-letter name of God. We're on page 2. Everything is transliterated, and we will sing in English as well. Yedid nefesh harachaman mishoch avdecha el ritzonecha yarutz avdecha kemo hayal yishtachaveh el mul hadarecha yerem lo yedidotecha bino vetzuf vechotam. How splendid is your light, which worlds do reflect. My soul is worn from craving for your love's delight. Please, God, to heal her and show her your face, so my soul can see you and bathe in your grace. There she will find strength and healing in the sight. Her joy will be complete, then eternal delight. Vatihye emuna rachamecha v'chusana al ben ahuvecha. Ki ze kama nichsof nichsafti lirot meira b'tiferet uzecha. Chamda libi v'chusana ve'atit alam. Oh, help my lover spread your canopy of peace, and fold all human beings, and give all pains surcease. Your presence on this earth plane do make known to us, and we shall respond with song and with dance. Rush, my love, be quick, the time for love is now. Let your gentle favor grace us as of old. The Kabbalat Shabbat service. Kabbalat Shabbat means receiving Shabbat. That's what it means. So it's basically saying, open yourself to receive. I've often mentioned here that it's a very different dynamic to give than it is to receive. It's often easier to give. Puts you in the sort of, you think you're at a higher level. I'm giving. But learning to receive is pretty high. Learning to open yourself up and just receive stuff from people. And I think that's really what we do when we get into Shabbat. We open ourselves. And by doing so, we get to be a bit more vulnerable. And that's fine. Because most of us are very defended most of the time. Rightly so, perhaps. So Shabbat gives us a bit of a respite from that concern. So there are 7 Psalms. There are 6 before Lachadodi, which is a beautiful poem about receiving the indwelling presence of God, the Shekhinah. And if you look at the little chart on page 3, and next to each of the Psalms, you'll notice that this is the 7 lower spheres of the tree of life, the mystical tree of life, starting on page 3 for those who are with us here and those who are at home as well. So Psalm 95 deals with the if you will, the aspect of the God called Chesed, loving kindness or compassion. Lechu neranena la'adonai nahari aletzu yeshenu nikad mafana b'toda b'zmirot nari alo ki gadol ya umelech gadol al kol Elohim Asher biyado mechkerei haaretz v'toafot harim lo. Ay 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 40 שנה כל בדור, ויאמרם טועה לבבהם, והם לא ידעו דרכי, אשר נשבעתי באפי, אם יבואון אל מנוחתי. We're on page 5, Psalm 96. If you look at the chart, we're entering the aspect of boundary. Even abundance has to have boundary. Even compassion has to have boundary. We must have that balance between totally giving and stopping occasionally. It's very important. What tune you going to use? You're going to say a few words now.
Say a few words. Some words. Shabbat shalom, everybody.
Shabbat shalom.
It's wonderful to see people in person, online. And I absolutely love this psalm, Psalm 96. Shiru l'Adonai shir chadash, shir l'Adonai kol haaretz. I sing a new song to you, and the earth sings too. Now, what I love is this beautiful message of a partnership. It's a partnership between humans and the earth joining together in song for God. Because we know that all of creation is holy, not just humans, but the earth, the sea, the water, the animals, everything has a divine spark in it. It's all holy. And later in the psalm, in our Cedar, the third stanza from the bottom, we sing, Yismechu hashamayim v'tegel haaretz yeram hayam umelo'o. Let the heavens rejoice, let the earth dance, let the sea churn, which is an interesting word for the translation. Let the sea churn with all the life that's in it. There's so much singing, so much dancing. It's the earth, the sea, the skies, everywhere. It's a party where everybody's invited. There's no A-list, there's no B-list. Everybody gets included in this singing for God. But the thing that is worth noting is that everybody has to feel up for singing. I don't like to sing when I'm not feeling up for it. I don't like to sing when I'm feeling sick. And far too often we know that the earth is sick. The earth is in pain and maybe not always up for the singing that we're proclaiming. We know that climate change has reached a dramatic point where it is right now. Just this week, the Boston Globe reported, in a worst-case scenario, the government reported sea levels in the Northeast could rise as much as 21 inches by 2050. And I bring this up because the earth cannot join us in our rejoicing for God if she's in pain. The earth cannot join us in rejoicing if we view her as an object for our taking. And this pain, this climate catastrophe will not end as long as we do not see us and the earth as one. Environmental activist Joanna Macy wrote, the Vietnamese Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh was once asked what we need to do to save our world. What we need to do, he replied, is to hear within us the sounds of the earth crying. The idea of the earth crying within us or through us doesn't make sense if we view ourselves only as separate individuals. Yet if we think of ourselves as deeply embedded in a larger web of life, then the idea of the world feeling through us seems entirely natural. We need to hear the sounds of the earth cry, and we need to not view ourselves as separate individuals. And in this psalm, Psalm 96, we see a glimpse of that unity that we yearn for, that hopeful unity that will bring rejoicing from all of creation. Because in this line, Yismechu hashamayim v'tegel haaretz, we have God. Yismechu begins with a yud, hashamayim with a hey, v'tegel with a vav, and haaretz with a hey. Yud hey vav hey, the word for God, is right there. And if we're paying attention, we see God in our rejoicing. That oneness between us and all of creation is there, but sometimes we just have to notice it. And once we notice it, then we rejoice. I encourage us tonight to use Psalm 96 as an anthem. Let it be an anthem to see ourselves and all of creation as one. And may that oneness lead us, the earth, the heavens, the waters, and everything in between, to singing and dancing, rejoicing out to God. Psalm 96, page 5. שירו לאדוני שיר חדש, שירו לאדוני כל הארץ, שירו לאדוני ברכו שמו, בסרו מיום ליום ישועתו, ספרו והגויים כבודו, בכל העמים נפלאותיו, כי גדול אדוני ומלא מאוד, נורא הוא על כל אלוהים, כי כל אלוהי העמים אלילים, ואדוני שמיים עשה, הוד והדר לפניו, עוז ותפארת במקדשו. הבו לאדוני משפחות עמים, הבו לאדוני כבוד ועוז. הבו לאדוני כבוד שמו, צאו מנחה ובואו לחצרותיי, וישתחוו לאדוני בהר הקודש, חילו מפניו כל הארץ. אמרו והגויים אדוני מלך, עבדתי כל תבל בעלתימו, ידין עמים במישרים, ישמחו השמיים ותגל הארץ. ירם הים ומלואו, יעלו שדי וכל אשר בו,
to page 6, Psalm 97, and we're here in a place now of an aspect of Tiferet, splendor, of bringing together and harmonizing things. It's so important for us to figure out what the different aspects we have in our lives and how can they live harmoniously. Because as you know, we all have different parts. Some parts are angry at other parts, etc. And my wife was a psychologist, uses this methodology, parts methodology. So you have to give, she tells me, permission to all of your parts to speak to each other without anger, without defendedness. And this is what Tiferet is. If you look at this beautiful, the diagram of the tree of life, is that place that you can harmonize. That's beautiful. That's beautiful to be able to harmonize. And on page 6, Psalm 97, the last two lines.
Or zaru ala tzadik, u'yishreilef simcha. Or zaru ala tzadik, u'yishreilef simcha. Simchu tzadikim b'Adonai, ve'odu lezechek kodsho. Simchu tzadikim b'Adonai, ve'odu lezechek kodsho.
Light is sown for the tzaddik, the just one. Then simcha, gladness for those who are ethical. Tzaddikim, just ones, rejoice in Yah and give thanks to God's holy name, to the consciousness of Yah's uniqueness. We move to Psalm 98 on page 8, and notice on our tree we're at this place of endurance. Netzach, endurance. It could also be a place of victory, if you will. But endurance is really what many of us strive for, particularly over the last few years. How do you endure it? How do you endure it? And we've, I think, done the best we can. maybe not enough, but the best we can. So on page 8, Psalm 98.
We're in the middle of the page where it begins to get bold. Zamru ladonai bechinor. Zamru ladonai bechinor. Bechinor. Vekol zimra. Zamru ladonai bechinor. Bechinor. Vekol zimra. Zamru ladonai bechinor. Bechinor. Vekol zimra. Zamru ladonai bechinor. Bechinor. Vekol zimra.
Sing praises to Yah with the aid of the harp, with the harp and the melodious voice. With trumpets, the sound of the horn, shout before the sovereign Yah. Let the sea roar and all that it contains, the world and that they dwell in it. Let the rivers clap their hands, let all the mountains sing for joy before Yah. For Yah comes to judge the earth, and God will judge the world with righteousness and the peoples with equity. Page 9, Psalm 99, and you notice we moved over to Hod, glory. It's also the source of the word, perhaps Todah, thankfulness. So we have to have that balance between endurance and also the capacity to see what the end of the road is as well. On page 99, the middle of the page, Romemu, raise up Yah, raise up the ineffable name that can't be pronounced, Eloheinu, who guides us, and worship at Yah's holy hill. For Yah, who guides us, is unique and holy.
Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu romemu. Ay. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu ve'ishtachavu lehar kodsho.
Psalm 29. If you look at the chart, we're at Yesod, which means foundation, but also means channel, a channel of flow. And one of the things that interrupts our own capacity to let the divine flow through us into the world, because we are basically conduits for that. We rise and we're grounded on the earth and we rise up to the heavens, right? But what stands in the way? What stops it up? Ego. Thank God. When we have this very large sense of ego, it's hard to create that spaciousness. It's hard to see the other. So with Yesod, with the Psalm, the Kavanah, the directed intentionality is how do we open up ourselves to let the flow of life continue through us and not get stopped up. Adonai lahamabu yahashav, vayishev Adonai melech leolam.
Adonai, Oz le'amo yiten, Adonai yevarech, et amo v'shalom.
On page 12, we greet the Shabbat. And I love the translation here. Come, my friend, to greet the bride, the Shekhinah, the feminine aspect of the divine, the indwelling presence, and to welcome the many faces of Shabbat. In Hebrew, it's B'nai Shabbat, the many faces of Shabbat. And why is that the case? Because there isn't any Shabbat that any Jew observes that is identical to what another Jew observes.
Very true.
No matter where, you could be within the Haredi community, right? Behind the walls of Mea Sharim, or you could be a liberal Reform Jew, right, who observes Shabbat his or her own way. But you'll notice that there isn't a possibility of basically doing it identically. And there's no need to do it identically, because there are many faces of Shabbat, as you have many faces as well, many incarnations, many ways of seeing yourself. So Lecha Dodi is a beautiful poem, and embedded in it is the name of the author of it, Shlomo Halevi Alkabetz. That's his name. And he wrote it about, let's say, 600 years ago. And for us, in the Jewish tradition, 600 years is like yesterday, because we have a very long, because the Psalms that we have just sung go back to 2,500 years. 2,500 years. So to say 600, I still will trying it out to see if it works. We're trying it out. If it works for another 400 years, we know we did a good job. Lecha Dodi Lekerat Kala Pnei Shabbat Nekabla. Lecha Dodi Lekerat Kala Pnei Shabbat Nekabla. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad, השמיענו אל המיוחד. אדוני אחד ושמו אחד, לשם ולתפארת ולתהילה. לך דודי לקראת קהלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת קהלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה, כי מקור הברכה, בראש מקדם דסוכה, סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה. היי 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 מקדש מלך עיר מלוכה, קומי צאי מתוך ההפכה, רב לך שבט בעמק הבכה, והוא יחמול עלייך חמלה. לך דודי לקראת קהלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת קהלה, פני שבת נקבלה. השתערי מעפר קומי, לבשי בגדי תפארתך עמי, על יד ישי בית הלחמי, קרובה נפשי נפשי גאה לו. לך awake, awake, my love, awake. Your light has come, arise, be light.
Rise now, rise, sing your new song. The splendor of God is open through you.
Oh, Lecha Dodi Lekerat Kala Penei Shabbat Nekabla Lecha Dodi Lekerat Kala Penei Shabbat Nekabla. No more guilt, no more shame. Why be helpless? Why be weak?
All my afflicted find shelter in you. Holy city rebuilt on her hill. Lecha Dodi Lekerat Kala Penei Shabbat Nekabla. Lecha Dodi Lekerat Kala Penei Shabbat Nekabla. V'hayu Shisa Shosayich
page 14.
V'rachaku kol mevalayich Yasis alayich Eloayich Kim sos lev lev be'ahava Kifrotzi Ve'et Adonai Taritzi Al Yadish Ben Parzi Ve'nismecha Ve'nagila. I invite everybody who's here to join us outside if you want, as we greet the Sabbath bride.
Penei Shabbat Nekabla. Hi da da dee da da. Hi da dee da da. Hi da dee da da. Hi da dee da da.
Hi da da da. Hi da da da. Thank
Lecha Dodi Lekerat Kala Penei Shabbat Nekabla. Lecha Dodi Lekerat Kala Penei Shabbat Nekabla. Take a breath. Enjoy. Breathing is good.
That is true.
Ah, yes. So we now are starting Shabbat. That was basically getting ready. And we started with Psalm 92 and its sister Psalm 93 on page 15. If you look at the chart on page 16, you'll see where we have arrived. We've arrived at Shabbat. We've arrived at Malchut, grandeur. We've arrived at Shekhinah, the indwelling presence. And what the indwelling presence does is basically has the capacity to receive, very much so, almost like a womb receiving. But what keeps the system going, at least in our understanding of the dynamics of this, is that it's immediately going back up and down. It's constant. It's on a chart. You can't tell the movement, right? We can't give you the movement. No one's done a good video yet. But it's a constant thing. And instead of seeing this up and down, the best, I think, articulation of the Sfirot is the spiral. The ongoing spiral, around and around and around. And that really is how you can understand how the energy that we have down here and the divine energy basically is constantly interweaving and moving forward. It constantly moving forward. So here we are at Mizmor Shili Yom Shabbat on page 15. It is good to give thanks to Yah and to sing praises to your exalted most high name, Elyon, the most high, to declare your loving kindness in the morning and your faithfulness in the nights. With an instrument of 10 strings, with a navel, the dulcimer, with a solemn sound upon the kinnor, the harp. For you, Yah, has made me glad through all of your works. I will be joyous and exult in the works of your hands. How great, Magadlu, are your works, Yah. Your thoughts arise from the very depths of creation. A brutish person will not perceive it, nor will a fool comprehend this. Mizmor Shir, Mizmor Shir, Leyom HaShabbat. Mizmor Shir, Mizmor Shir, Leyom HaShabbat. Tov lehodot laya ulezamer leshimcha elyon. Page 15 at the top of the page. Lehagid b'haboker chasecha v'emunatcha b'leilot. Alei asor ve'alei navel alei gayom bechinor ki simchtani ya befalecha b'maaseh yadecha aranen magadlu maaseh chaya מאוד עמקו מחשבותיך, ישבר לא ידע, וכסיל לא יבין איזו. היי 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 The righteous shall flourish like the palm tree. They shall grow like a cedar in Lebanon. Planted in the house of Yah, they shall flourish in the courts of our God. They will still bring forth fruit in old age, and they will be juicy and rich with sap, to declare that Yah is upright, my rock, in whom there is no falsehood or wickedness. Tzadi katamar yifrach, ke'erez ba'lebanon yizke, shetulim bebeit Yah, bechatzrot Eloheinu yafrichu, o yinuvud beseiva, deshenim verananim yiyu, lehagi ki yashar Yah, suri velo avlat. The sister psalm, always accompanying Psalm 92 on page 16, middle of the page. Hamikolot mayim rabim, adim mishberei yam, adim mishberei yam, adim amarom, Adonai, adim amarom, haya, edotecha, nemenu meod, lebeitcha nava kodesh, Adonai, leorech yamim, Adonai, leorech yamim. Those among us who are in mourning or commemorating the anniversary of the death of a loved one at your yahrzeit, please rise for the Mourner's Kaddish on page 17. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabba.
Amen.
V'yalma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei. V'chayechon uv'yomechon v'chayei d'chol bet Yisrael. Ba'agala uv'zman kari v'yimru amen. Yehei shmei rabba mevorach le'olam u'me'olmaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpo'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei d'kutsha brechu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran bi'alma v'yimru amen. Yehei shlomo rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru amen. Oseh shalom b'bromav hu yaseh shalom, aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'al kol yoshvei tevel v'yimru amen.
Amen. Amen.
I invite you for our evening service, if you're able to rise, on page 17.
Page 19.
19, pardon me, page 919. Barechu et Adonai HaMevorach.
Baruch Hashem v'rach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. You may be seated. The first blessing before the Shema on page 19. It's a beautiful blessing about light and darkness. Light and darkness. You know, in our meditation community this morning and last week, we kept talking about the fact that we always seem to say light is good, right? First thing God does, Vayhi or, right? And and this is basically a judgment that we've created, because there's a lot of value in darkness. And what this prayer here is about the fact that darkness and light are always rolling, and one goes to the other, one goes to the other. And somebody brought up a beautiful thing who said, you know, we see that darkness can be a place of generativity. We take a seed and we plant it in the ground where there's no light. But it takes that darkness for the germination to take place. And eventually, it will need light in order to survive. And same thing in many things. That our days, for instance, the Jewish holidays, like tonight, we're starting at night. Why should we start at night? We should start in the morning, right? It's a new day, right? But at night, because it is this basic movement from darkness to light, and then again to the darkness, which create that sort of natural order within ourselves. Because we have dark places and we have light places. And one should replace the other, and then it might return, but that's okay. We know the light's going to be this day. Which, in a sense, light does generate a sense of hope, but it also gives us an opportunity when it's dark to also have a time for contemplation, which you do not necessarily get during the day. There's something about nighttime. It's mysterious. And one thing about our tradition is that we know that much of what we talk about is a mystery. We don't know. People made this up. But they did a hell of a job. The poetry is beautiful. It's a shame most people don't know Hebrew, but it's beautiful poetry. It's done with a great sense of, you can tell, great care. So let's read this together. You have the transliteration there on page 19, the blessing of light. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher midvaro ma'ariv aravim, b'chokhmah potech she'arim, ובתבונה משנה עיתים ומחליף את הזמנים ומסדר את הכוכבים במשמרותיהם ברקיע כרצונו. בורא יום ולילה, כל אור מפני חושך וחושך מפני אור. הוא מעביר יום ומביא לילה. הוא מבדיל בין יום ובין לילה, אדוני צבאות שמו. אל חי וקיים, תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה המעריב ערבים, and give me a strong
Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Amen, brothers and sisters.
Amen.
The gift of love, ahavat olam.
The most experiential way I've ever experienced, to use that word again, this prayer, Ahavat Olam, was this summer. I was praying in an interfaith chapel at Beth Israel Hospital, and all of a sudden, as I'm getting to this prayer, everlasting love, ahavat olam, a puppy walks in. And I've never felt so much love experienced during this prayer. And so I encourage you, what brings you so much love? What could walk in this room for ahavat olam? Ahavat olam, Beit Yisrael, Amcha avta, Torah u'mitzvot, chukim u'mishpatim, otanu limadeta. Al kein Adonai Eloheinu, b'shokveinu u'vkumeinu, nasiach bechukecha, v'nismach b'divrei Toratecha, u'v'mitzvotecha, le'olam va'ed. Ki hem chayenu ve'orech yameinu, ve'ech yameinu, uve'hem negei yomam v'layla, yomam v'layla. Ve'avat tzechatzetzeh mimenu le'alamim, baruch atah Adonai, ohev amo Yisrael.
On page 21, the Shema. Again, this is, I often remind people, this is not a prayer. The Shema is not a prayer. You're testifying to something. It's a testimony. And it's called in Hebrew, it's Kriyat Shema, the reading of the Shema. So we'll read together on page 21, and then we'll move to another part of the Shema. What we do here is we take a full breath for each word of the Shema. We let the breath out, then we take a second breath for each word. So it says basically what this is, the way you could translate it, the way you often heard it was, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one, right? You all have heard that. But it's really listen. That's the first thing. Listen. I often say, if it said, Speak, O Israel, we'd be the holiest people in the world. We're terrific. When it comes to talking, we're great. But here, listen. Yisrael. What is Yisrael? One who wrestles with God. We all have to wrestle with it. I don't believe anybody can go into this Shema with knowing fully or having full faith, however you want to use it. Doubt and faith are two sides of the same coin. You wrestle with it. Yah, the inexpressible, that can only be expressed by breath. Eloheinu, who guides us. Eloheinu as a verb. And Yah as Yah as a verb, and Eloheinu as a verb, who guides us. It's not somewhere else, but it's within our own psyches. Yah, the ineffable, is echad, is one, creates connection, interdependency. The idea that was mentioned here as Titarhan, of blessed memory, would say interbeing. It's a term that he created, interbeing, where you are totally intertwined. In the case of what Danny reminded us is with the world, with earth, but also with each other. We are, whether we like it or not, in our relationships we become interbeings. And I think that's a really wonderful way of understanding echad as well. So we take full breath for each word of the Shema. Shema. Yisrael, Adonai, Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. L'shem kevod malchuto ilam voed. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך ולכתך בדרך ושוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו תותפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך. Please join me on page 24 in the middle of the page. And those at home as well, I'd like you to read this out loud, okay? Wherever you're sitting or standing, read this out loud. It's one of my favorite ways of understanding the second paragraph of the Shema. Are we ready? Let's read together. If I carefully follow the way I have been shown, the way of justice, mercy, and humility, serving life with the fullness of my life, then the earth will flourish with righteousness and riches. Pure rain will fall in its season, and the earth will bring forth her bounty. My labors will flourish, and the fragrance of life will scent the air like fine oil. And there'll be food enough for all, and all will be able to partake of it. No one will exploit another, for no other shall be separate from the one. But beware. We have to be very aware and beware. If I follow another path, pursuing gods of narrow desire, who separate one from another in quest of power and control, then the heavens will rain poison, creation will fall ill, and I and all will soon disappear from this good earth. Therefore, I impress these words upon my heart to quell anger. I bind them on my hands to stop violence. I set them before my eyes to see the one who is all. By word and by deed I teach them. I repeat them at home and away, morning and night. I write them upon the doorposts of my home and upon my gate, that my dwelling be a haven from ignorance and delusion. Then my days, the days of my people, will endure forever. One generation passing righteousness and kindness to the next, all the days of the earth. Adonai Elohechem Emet. Middle of page 25. Reb Dan.
Malchuto v'ratzon kiblu aleihem Moshe u'Miriam u'bnei Yisrael lechanu Yoshua b'simcha rabba ve'amru chulam mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai mi chamocha nedar ba'kodesh Norah Teilot Osef Eleh Malchutecha uvanecha Bokei hayam lifnei Moshe Ze Eli anu ve'amru Adonai imloch leolam va'ed V'ne'emar ki v'da Adonai et Yaakov Ugalo mi'elech chazak mimenu Baruch atah Adonai Ka'al Yisrael.
Amen, amen, amen. So let's read together the Hashkivenu in English on page 26. Cause us, eternal our God,
to lie
down for well-being and help us arise, our ruler to life. Spread over us the shelter of your well-being and fix in us good counsel in your presence. Save us for the sake of your name and shield us. Keep us far from us enmity, illness, strife, hunger, and fear. Keep oppressors from confronting or pursuing us. Let us be covered by the shadow of your wings, for you are our protector and helper. Mercy and compassion is your rule. Guard our going out and our coming in for life and for well-being from this time forth and forever. And spread over us the shelter of your well-being.
Praised
are you, Adonai, who spreads over us the shelter of your well-being, and over the people of Israel, over Jerusalem, and over the entire world. Ufros aleinu sukat shelomecha, baruch ata ya, haporei sukat shalom aleinu, v'al kol amo Yisrael, v'al Yerushalayim, v'al kol ha'olam.
Amen.
We rise to the declaration of Shabbat on page 27.
V'shameru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asot et ha-Shabbat לדורתם ברית עולם. היי 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 ביני ובין בני ישראל עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, וביום השביעי שבת וינפש.
Following the transition with the Chatzi Kaddish on page 28, the standing Amidah begins on page 29. And don't feel you have to read only the Hebrew in transliteration, read the English, read the comments. Just a chance for us to be quiet for a while during our service. The Chatzi Kaddish on page 28 is the transition. Yitkadash, Shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
Yalmad divrach yirudei yamelich malchutei.
בחייכון וביומייכון ובחיידכון בית ישראל בעגלה ובזמן קריב אמרו אמן יהי שמי רבא מבורך לעולם ומלמיה יסברך יסברך ויסתבח ויתמר ויתם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקדושה ברכו לילה מכל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירה בעלמה ואמרו אמן.
If it's your custom to move up to one of our faith quilts, this one represents loving kindness, chesed, and this one represents gevura, boundary. So if you feel like if you need a little bit more loving kindness, it's a good place to stand. If you need a little more backbone, that's a good place to stand. But most of us just can be in the middle. I think that's the way most of us are. Page 29. אתה הקדוש, קדוש, אתה קידש היום בשביל שמך תחליט מה זה ויכלו שמיים בארץ בצבא ויחלו ביום בשביל מעשה ויבוש בכל מה שעשה ויבוש חיים ביום בשביל קדושתו ויבוש שבת קבלת שבת מסות צהר תעלי בינו למחווה מודים אנחנו חיינו מסורים בידיך יעל כולם יסברך כל החיים בדור הסלם טוב שמך ולכם בלעודוס שלום רב ברך הזהב וכל ישראל וכל עת חושב ושלבך וחעת ונבחר ורחת בישראל בשלום ואין עצום כל נפשי תלמוד וכל שמי עונה חפר וצרתם כמה שבתם עשה למען שבך ועשה למען יולך עשה למען תבצע ועשה למען כנסך למען יחלצו ידידך ושריעה ימין כל בני לביא ורצני לפני בבי עיני סולי וגואלי נושא שלום ונאמר ויזה שלום נגלה כל ישראל קודש ותפאר וישברו אמן.
Oh, say shalom, shalom bimromav. Hu yaseh shalom. Oh, say shalom, shalom bimromav. Hu yaseh shalom. Oseh Shalom. Shalom Aleinu. Ve'al kol Yisrael. Ve'al kol Yoshvei Tevel. Oh, ay, ay, ay. Oh, ay, ay, ay. Ay, 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 ay. Ay, 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 ay. Oh, ay, 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 ay. Oh, ay, ay, ay. Ay, 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 ay.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Good
We're coming
Shabbos.
to the end of our service, but I wanted to say a few words. So I mentioned earlier at the beginning of the service, some of you were here, many were not, that our Parshat this week is called Tisa, and it's well known for many things. Of course, it's the incident of what is called the golden calf. May not have been a golden calf, but it possibly was a golden calf. And it's well known, all of you saw 10 Commandments, you know, God tells Moses when he, on the way down, he says, oh, the people are gone crazy. You know, it's really nuts. And it's fun, this happens quite often, is that Moshe and God are like partners. And when things go a little bad, he says, your people, you know, are really, it's like a couple, your son, right? And he does this quite often, you know, they're going crazy, you know, and he comes down and he sees that it's more crazy than he imagined. And according to the tradition, he shatters the tablets, a well-known shattering of the tablets. And of course, there are all kinds of midrashim, rabbinic interpretations of what it means. Why did he drop them? By the way, these were not gigantic tablets. These were, we know about the size of them. They weren't hard to lift, but they were stone and they were heavy enough. So one of the traditions is that because they were written by the finger of God, they were hollowed out, engraved into, just not engraved, but hollowed out from one side and the other. Meaning if you picked it up, you could see through the olive. We could see through that. And according to the tradition, when this incident with the calf, of the people worshiping the calf, the letters, otiot parchu ba'avir, the letters went up into the air. And it became very heavy and he dropped it. So it wasn't done intentionally in a way. It's very interesting that they try somehow in the rabbinic teachings to somehow alleviate the idea that Moshe got angry and did it. Okay. So what was going on? What was this calf? Well, it was not idolatry. I know it sounds strange. But this calf was not transgressing the first commandments, which say, do not have another God before me. They thought that they were creating a substitute for that God who had taken them out of Egypt. Who will take us on this journey, right? We came into this midbar, this wilderness, following this guy Moshe, and he got some really amazing stuff going on. But where is he now? We are lost. So they take Aaron, his brother, who seems to be a craftsman in this, and they build this thing. But they're calling this calf, it's not being called another God. It is the replacement for Moshe, and thus it will lead them on their journey to the promised land. So it's a very interesting thing. So what could the issue be? Why was it needed to be the people so castigated? According to the story in the Torah, Moshe sees this dancing, and he uses the word litzachek, which means it had a lot of sexual, if you will, impulse in it. And he was just taken aback from it. And according to the tradition, he asked, who is for me? And only his clan came for him, Levites. The rest of the people didn't come. So he sends out the Levites. I know this sounds horrible, but this is a while back. He sends out the Levites and says, find the ringleaders of this, those counter-revolutionaries. We had a revolution when we got out of Egypt. We did something remarkable. We broke the chains, not only of kings, but the chains of pharaohs and all before who had slaves. And they killed 3,000. Now, it sounds horrible, it is, but if you accept the numbers given by the Torah for how many people left Egypt, 600,000 men from the age 20 and up, it's quite a bit of people, 3,000 is a small percentage. But the bottom line is this was a counter-revolution. And they were not trying to get rid of Moshe necessarily, because Moshe didn't come down, but they wanted to create something else that would lead them. And in a way, they knew about calves from their experience in Egypt. It's probably based upon an Egyptian god named Apis, A-P-I-S, which was a large bull god. And they knew that this was around, that was powerful, and was connected with the earth. So they said, we'll fashion it like that. So it came out of an experience they had. So according to our tradition, this was so powerful a transgression that it created a chasm, a perut it's called, a chasm between ourselves and the divine, which we're constantly trying to overcome and to jump over. So things don't look good. But then something happens. God says to Moshe, you know, and by the way, God doesn't speak. He doesn't have a larynx. Okay, let's make that clear. God doesn't speak. Moshe is a prophet. Moshe hears, opens himself up, and hears these words. And the words are, as you will hear again and again, by the way, not only once, let me get rid of these people. They're a real stiff-necked people. That's the word that's used all along. They're a stiff-necked people. They're not going to change. Let me get rid of them. I'll give you a better people. And Moshe, as I mentioned earlier, being the faithful shepherd, sees everyone in his flock as deer. Remember, he became, according to tradition, he became the one to be the redeemer in Egypt because of how he shepherded even the little lambs and made sure they were not caught by the wolves. And God said, oh, this guy really cares about even the marginal. He's a good person to lead the children of Israel out of Egypt. So God said, I'll blot them out. Enough already. And by the way, they will continue murmuring. They murmur a lot, and they'll continue to murmur. I must say, we are a tough group, I must say. The kvetcherai was unbelievable. Always kvetching. So Moses said, you can't do that. The first reason he gives, it's an interesting reason, is because people are going to say, you brought them out here to the wilderness, so they should die. It's a shanda. You know what it is? A shanda. It will be a terrible PR for us. Terrible PR. And then he says, what can we do? And here he goes back into being a partner with God. God needs to become God. All through the Torah, God is becoming God. Moshe is helping him become God. And from that time on, basically, we'll be seeing if you will, the receding of God in the other books of the Bible. So he says, give me an opportunity. What can I do? He says, well, I'll tell you what. If you're able to put up with these people, then I guess I can too. So what should I do? He said, I want to see you. I want to experience you in a deep way. I want to see you face to face. He goes up on the mountain again, 40 days and 40 nights. And he says, God says to him, no one can see my face and live, but what I can show you is I'll put you on a little cliff and I'll put my hand, very anthropomorphic, by the way, right? Don't take it that way, but it's very anthropomorphic. I'll put my hand to protect you, and then I shall pass by you, and all you'll be able to see is my leaving you, my backside. My backside. So it works. And he gives him a formula. Adonai, Adonai, God, God, El Rachum V'Chanan, the 13 attributes that we sing all through the Slichot, all through the Slichot. You will know it. Adonai, Adonai, El Rachum V'Chanun, Erech Apayim, Rav Chesed V'Yemet, Notzer Chesed Lahalafim, right? Nosei Avo V'Fesha B'Chata V'Nakeh. So the rabbis, when they put that verse in the Slichot, stop the sentence. Interesting, because the rest of the sentence is, but I will forgive, but there's certain people who have to be taken accountable. And I will give mercy, chesed, loving kindness for 1,000 generations, le'alafim, but those who are responsible, I will carry their their guilt will be carried on for 3 or 4 generations. Okay. The rabbis realized that's not a good message on Yom Kippur, so they stopped it right So this key to tshuva, this key to forgiveness, we've been using for a while now. And we've been using it because ultimately when we ask forgiveness from others and as well for God, it has to be more than just lip service. It has to be what God said to Moshe. I can't look at you face to face, but I can give you an opportunity to look back upon who you were. So when a person asks for forgiveness, part of the process in our tradition is you look back and see what you've done. And you have to say it. And then you can be forgiven, but sometimes people don't want to forgive you. So you only have to go 3 times. Otherwise, it's their problem, not your problem. But 3 times you have to go and say, I know what I did. I will not do it again. But more importantly, I'm not the same person that I was. I'm somebody else now. And I think this is where love comes in. Torah doesn't say that. But if you love someone, it's probably easier to forgive, or maybe not. I'm not going to say it's a guarantee. But there's something about love that does allow us to see the person as they are and to accept them as they are. That doesn't mean they don't have to say they did wrong. That doesn't mean that. I love you with your flaws. I understand that. That's true. But if the same flaw keeps going on, it's a problem. So it's a thing of how do you learn that key to tshuva. Tshuva means return, recalibration. I mentioned that earlier. So that's why this parsha is a dear one to all of us. Yes, there was a transgression, trying to create another way to get to God through a statue, right? And of course, there's also the story of how these people are given another opportunity. And once they're given an opportunity, Moses comes down with 2 more tablets, and then something very beautiful is said. And there are 2 versions, by the way, of this story, one in Devarim, in Deuteronomy, and one in Exodus. They're not the same story, which is kind of interesting. It says, make for me a little box, and put the tablets in. But put the shattered tablets in as well as the whole tablets. That's a brilliant kind of thing to say. You always are carrying around your shattered self as well. There's also the full self. But you can't eliminate that shattered self. You can't just say, it didn't happen. Yes, it happened. But it's not the only thing in your in your ark. It's not the only thing in your ark. Also the full tablets are there in the ark. So this idea that we don't try to repress, or we don't try to somehow excuse, but we try to realize that, yes, there is still room for wholeness. There's still room for wholeness, that we can overcome those shattering things that took place in our lives. And we've all had those experiences one way or the other. But we carry on. And that's really an important story here, that we carry on. And I would hope that it means something to you as you look back on your life and you look back on what the things you've done, of how you can overcome the feeling of shatteredness or brokenness and really find, I hope to all of us, I wish us all to find a shleimut, to find some wholeness, a shleimut in our lives. And that's really the great reward for being a person of faith, a person who challenges, a person who thinks. We have so many people around that may not be doing that all the time. But it's a basic thing. And we are people that actually, and Shabbat's a good way to do it, is they actually can see more than one perspective at the same time. Imagine 2 ideas in your head at the same time. You can juxtapose 2 ideas. Obviously, our culture has not been encouraging of that. And unfortunately, we're paying the price for that polarization. But we will get over it, and we will be whole again. I am certain. It will take a while, but we will be whole again. So we are continuing with our service with the prayer for healing. If you have anyone who is either in need of healing or you yourself are in need of healing, please put the name into the chat, and we'll ask people around here for names as well. And we will do a Misha Berach for them. Anybody? Your side is something else. This is health, healing. Okay, excuse me, I'm not getting you. Antonio? Okay. And anyone else? Yes, sir. Warren Silverman. Anyone else? Yes, please. Moshe ben Sarah.
Yonatan ben Hodel, Hanalea bat Shir Sivan, Jesse Kenny.
Okay. Anybody online?
Gershon ben Ella, Ella ben Shofsi, Dekni Casey Lynn, Linda Al, Yael Batova, Matthew, Margot Voltero.
Thank you so much. So, Mishaberach.
Misheberach Avoteinu Mikor HaBracha Le'aimoteinu. May the source of strength who lets us on before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Misheberach imoteinu mikor habracha le'avoteinu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say Amen.
If you're able to rise, our final hymn will be Aleinu, which is found on page 44. Please rise if you're able.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon ha'kol, לתת גדולה ליוצא בראשית, שלא עשנו עם גוי הארצות, ולא שמנו עם משפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו מהם, ועלינו עם כל העולם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
For the sovereignty is yours, and you will reign eternally in honor. As it is written in your Torah, the Eternal will reign forever and ever. And it is said, the Eternal will be ruler over all the earth, and on that day the Eternal will be one, and God's name will be one.
ונאמר, והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ. ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
Those among us who are in mourning or are commemorating a yahrzeit, anniversary of the death of a loved one, the mourner's Kaddish is on page 48. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabba.
Amen.
V'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei. V'chayechon v'yomechon v'chayei d'chol bet Yisrael. V'agala v'zman kari v'yimru.
Amen. Yehi shmei rabba mevorach le'olam maya.
Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpo'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei d'kudsha. Brichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechemata. Damiran bi'alma v'yimru.
Amen.
Yehi shlomo rabba min shemaya. V'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'yimru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav. Hu yaseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol yoshvei tevel v'yimru. Amen.
Amen.
We have a few announcements.
We sure do. Shabbat shalom, everybody.
Shabbat shalom.
Wonderful
Shabbat
to see a
shalom. Good to
minion
see.
in person and online.
Very nice. Very nice.
This is Men's Shabbat this weekend from our TBZ Men's Group, And so tomorrow we'll have honors, aliyot, and all sorts of honors from the men's group, 10 a.m. and Torah study beforehand at 9 a.m. with Reb Moshe. Torah study in person only, but services hybrid just like tonight. Please note that Wonder Minyan, which was scheduled for tomorrow, our family service, is scheduled for next week. So all of you here, I know you were all so excited for Wonder Minyan, but that'll be for next week instead of this Shabbat. Lots happening in the happenings. You can check it out. Our Sunday Hebrew with Rabbi Sam is continuing as usual. The weekly men's group check-in is Sunday at 7 p.m. Boker Tov TBZ, our online minyan, Monday through Friday, from 8 to 8:45, an amazing time to schmooze. Eat, pray, learn, in person only. Eat, pray, learn with Rav Claudia and TBZers. Wednesday morning, there's a nightly, weekly evening Torah study class with Reb Moshe. On Wednesdays at 7:30. I have a weekly Talmud class at 7 p.m. on Thursdays. And finally, I want to highlight Recovery Shabbat with Rabbi Igel Guren Malos from March 4th and March 5th, a partnership with TBZ and JFCS. It's going to be a wonderful, wonderful Shabbat, a wonderful guest, and all that and more can be found in your happenings.
Well, we're going to conclude with Kiddush, which is on page 50, the bottom of the page. Please rise.
Thank you. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri hagafim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddishanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava v'ratzon hinchilanu zikaron lemaaseh v'reishit ki hu yom techila lemikrai kodesh zecher letziat mitzrayim kivanu v'acharta ve'otanu kidashta im kol ha'olam v'shabbat kodshecha be'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh haShabbat.
Amen, amen.
L'chaim.
L'chaim. Let's end
everybody.
with a nigun, a lively nigun. Wish you all a Shabbat Shalom. Yam baramba yam bamba yam bamba yam bamba yam baramba yam bamba yam baramba yam baramba Yambamba 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 hayra yambamba yambamba hayra yambamba 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 hayra hayra Shabbos, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbos, everybody.
Hope to see you all tomorrow morning at Torah study at 9.
Amen.